If you love an adrenaline rush by going fast, just love being outdoors, or simply need something to do, snowboarding is the perfect fit for you. The feeling that snowboarding brings is unimaginable. You must experience it yourself to know the feeling of peace that is brought while you're flying down the slopes or simply doing slow and sturdy S-turns. Today we will take a look at 3 different aspects of this snow hobby. As we ride up, we will look at the history of snowboarding. And when we get to the top, we look at all the equipment needed to snowboard. And when we ride down, we look at some terms and tips for snowboarding. Now we are riding up the ski lift, so let's look at some of the history. In the 1960s, snowboarding was developed in the 1960s and 70s, but first became really popular in the 1980s. During these early times, when snowboarding was first becoming popular, it was not allowed in ski resorts. And this led to people sneaking in at night to snowboard. As time went on, it was allowed in the ski resorts, and in 1998, it became an Olympic sport. After it became an Olympic sport, it slowly grew throughout the United States and other countries. Sliding back to the 1960s, we will see when the first model of snowboard was made. In 1965, an engineer named Sherman Poppin created a snowboard that became really famous. This snowboard was called the Snurfer because he felt like snowboarding was just surfing on snow. By the end of the 1970s, nearly 1 million of these snowboards had been sold. And then in 1975, the next famous snowboard was made. This snowboard was called the Winter Stick. Now that we have gone over the history, we have made it to the top. So let's see what equipment was needed for this ride. First things first, you can't go snowboarding without a snowboard. Along with a snowboard, there's bindings that attach to the top of the snowboard, and that is where your feet clip in. The last thing you need to finish this board setup is some good boots that fit your feet and the bindings on the snowboard. Aside from the board setup, some good clothes that keep moisture out are needed for comfort. You also need a helmet to protect your head and goggles to protect your eyes. Some good clothes that are good for snowboarding is some tall socks, under a base layer depending on if the weather's cold, and a snowboard jacket, snowboard pants, and some gloves. We now have our outfit, but we are not safe from an avalanche. Anytime we are snowboarding in the mountains, we are at risk of an avalanche. So we must have equipment to protect ourselves. One piece of equipment that is really beneficial in avalanches is a beacon. Beacons transmit your location along with finding others' locations. So in an incident where someone gets buried, being able to know where their location is will make the process of unburying them much faster. Along with having a beacon, an airbag in your backpack that simply inflates from pulling a handle will help protect trauma that comes from an avalanche slide, along with keeping you to the surface of the slide so you don't get buried. A shovel is also needed in case someone gets buried so you can bury them or unbury them. Now that we have all our equipment and are safe and ready for our ride, let's ride down. While we ride down, we will look at all of the tips for snowboarding and terms. But first, let's look at some tips. First things first, it is very dangerous to go snowboarding by yourself, especially in the mountains. So that should never be done. Along with snowboarding with people rather than by yourself, it is important to know the difficulty of the slopes before going down. For example, beginners should not go down a slope that has a sign showing black diamond or saying the words black diamond, because the meaning of black diamond is to mark the most difficult slope in each ski resort. Along with knowing the difficulty of each slope, it is important to look for different signs whilst riding down that might say caution or go slow. Now that we have learned some tips for snowboarding, let's learn some fun terms. First things first is terms can be used to talk about people's tricks, the different ways to ride, or even the type of snow. When it comes to tricks, someone could either successfully land it, and we could say they stuck the landing, or they could fail, fall on their face, and we could say they face planted. Along with describing different things of tricks, we can describe different ways of riding. There are just two different ways: left foot in the front, which is called riding regular, and right foot, which is called riding goofy. Aside from talking about tricks and the different ways of riding, we can also talk about the different types of snow. When it's hard, packed down, and icy, it's called hard pack, but when it's fluffy and soft, we could say it's pow, like powder. Now that we have learned the ski resort is getting ready to close, so our day is coming to an end. And just one day of snowboarding, we have learned many things, like the history of snowboarding, the equipment needed to snowboard, and some fun tips and terms that are related to snowboarding. Now that we have learned all the basics, make sure to stick the landing rather than faceplant, and most importantly, be safe.